Good morning, everyone. Time for another silver update. I had set aside this day to run some errands and get some things done, but got distracted with a video that came out yesterday from storm clouds gathering. Not really sure what his reason is for attacking the silver stackers. We're going to get into the video here in a second. But I wanted to show you the silver chart before we get started now. We've had a pretty strong rally here starting about 32.97 around 11 or so this morning. We're up to 33.22. Not really sure what's behind this rally. If we pull back, you can see that this is kind of making up for the drop that we had a couple days ago, and then we've got this other drop that was a couple of these were big late night smackdowns. So we're rallying strongly back into that territory. Is that going to mean this 4-hour MACD is going to find a bottom? Quite possibly that could be the case, and that means that this is just a small retracement. We're going to rally. It looked like we were going to roll over this morning, but then we got this sharp uptick. So we'll probably end up covering that tonight, and maybe there's some news behind it. We'll have to wait and see. Now let's get over to the main story, and that is this video by Storm Clouds Gathering. I don't know if you've heard of him before. He has a fairly popular YouTube channel. You can see he has 124 videos. I think he has like 20,000 plus subs. So has a decent following. You can see we got 299 likes and 60 dislikes. This was a I won't say it's a hit piece, but it was an attack against Chris Dwayne. He's not mentioned in that, and Storm Clouds Gathering says he doesn't want it to be a personal attack. So I'll respect that. I'm not going to make this a personal attack against him. There's no need. We can just look at the ideas, and apparently there's a lot of education that Mr. Storm Clouds Gathering needs in regards to history, economics, philosophy, and political science. There's quite a number of things he doesn't understand. We're going to get to those when we start to dissect this video. So let's start by playing it. Kind of interesting commentary here. He starts out by saying he doesn't want to make anybody mad, but he kind of shows this psycho guy here. Is he implying that this is what silver stackers are like? Are they all kind of like Raw Dog or Corey, just a bunch of crazy nutcases? I don't know. Maybe that's the implication. But let's jump in and deal with the arguments one by one.
I'm about to say some things that are going to make some people angry. But before you get angry, I want to make sure that you're not getting angry with me because you misunderstand my position. I'm not here to attack those who invest in precious metals. I'm not here to tell you where to invest. I don't defend the dollar or any other paper currency, and I honestly don't care what you do with your paycheck. My issue is with a few particular media figures who are misleading the public, whether intentionally or otherwise. There's some pretty prominent people here on YouTube who are selling people the false hope and a false sense of security by claiming that the solution to the problems we face is simply to convince people to buy up large quantities of physical silver. And that this alone will be enough to unseat the banking elite while at the same time protecting those smart enough to make this investment from the worst effects of the inevitable economic collapse. This perspective is delusional and dangerous, in much the same way that the false promises of snake oil salesmen who sold opium to cancer patients were dangerous.
Okay, so let's start with the first charge, that it's delusional and dangerous. And the analogy given is the snake oil salesman selling opium to cancer patients. Well, we don't want to get into a side rant here, but probably the cancer patients who were in pain and probably needed opium were probably better off than the cancer patients that we now fill with chemotherapy and radiation. And so who's really the snake oil salesman? But let's continue.
And I'm going to explain why. But first of all, just so you know I'm not exaggerating here, I want you to take a look at these quotes taken from the website of someone here on YouTube who has a following of over 20,000 subs. I'm not going to mention his name because I don't want this to be a personal attack. My issue is with the ideas he's putting forth. In this article, I intend to put forth a plan that will fundamentally change the game and do it from outside the system. It will overthrow the elitist system that enslaves us with debt and do so without a shot being fired. Most importantly, there is no way that the elite can stop it. The plan is quite simple. Sell every single asset you own right now and buy physical silver. This cavalier attitude is mirrored in another quote by that same individual. Let them print all that they want, so long as we stack silver. Okay, first of all, corrupt governments and banker cartels are not going to be overturned by you purchasing silver, no matter how much silver you buy. The dollar's value has absolutely nothing to do with the price of silver. The dollar's value comes from the fact that it's the only currency that can be used to buy oil in the global market. Silver could rise to $1,000 an ounce, and that fact would not change.
Okay, so let's look at a couple of points here. First of all, if silver rises to $1,000 an ounce, then obviously a lot of what Chris Duane is proposing has already come true, that those who are standing with him are now going to be in a position to help to reorganize something, an alternative system. Certainly they're going to be in a position to buy up other assets and have a much larger influence on the world than they would have if silver hadn't gone to $1,000 an ounce. But let's look at this charge that the value of the dollar is determined by the petrodollar. Now, as you know, if you follow my channel, I've covered the petrodollar. I've done videos on it, cartoons on it, a lot of things explaining it, what the petrodollar is, how the petrodollar works. And it's not fair to say that the value of the dollar is solely determined by the petrodollar. And we've delved into that when we've talked about the theories of FOFOA and others. The value of the dollar is determined by confidence. So confidence in the use of the dollar is what determines its value. Now, this chart here, which shows us the price of silver on the weekly chart, this is the price of the dollar. This is the price of the dollar going down against silver. So if you're going to talk about the value of the dollar and then cite petrodollars and then try to compare it to other currencies, then of course you're not really talking about the value of the dollar. The value of the dollar is decreasing against real assets such as gold and silver. So it's already happening. You can see it in the chart. This is the beginning of the collapse of the dollar. But back to the petrodollar, so we understand this. He does accurately describe the petrodollar. He has some very good videos that explain the connection between U.S. imperialism, we'll use that term, and the reason for the wars and the connection between the petrodollar. But one of the fundamental key things that he leaves out in his explanation of the petrodollar is the second part of the petrodollar that is perhaps even more important than the first part, which is only being able to buy oil with dollars, is petrodollar recycling. In other words, what is done with the dollars that are earned from selling oil? And that key second part of the petrodollar system, petrodollar recycling, was the agreement that the oil-producing nations would recycle their dollars back into Wall Street and the City of London by buying stocks, bonds, and debt assets of the governments that controlled that system, primarily, again, London and New York. So by leaving out petrodollar recycling, he leaves out a key understanding of what really is behind the value of the dollar, and that is confidence. Now, when we look into the theories of FOFOA, we know that if this theory is true, the concept is that even though they were still only selling their oil for dollars, they began to lose confidence in the value of those dollars, and specifically the petrodollar recycling system. And that was why, according to FOA, they began to require physical gold in exchange for those dollars be delivered to the Middle Eastern countries, OPEC countries. And we've seen in some of the wars, although the explanation is given for Libya and others that it's strictly based on the petrodollar, I don't think you can make that explanation necessarily. I think a piece of that was also petro-gold recycling. It was a recycling of the gold that those dictators had piled up, getting that gold back into the City of London, in New York, where, as Jay Snips recently covered, that Mexico has 96% of their gold stored. So there's a key piece that he's missing, and that has to do with confidence in the dollar. And if confidence in the dollar is broken, then even the petrodollar recycling system cannot maintain that value. Buying silver, again, is more powerful than buying gold, which was what the OPEC nations did according to FOA. And so that argument is bogus and will continue.
The dollar will fall when enough countries stop selling their oil in dollars. But that's not going to happen until the U.S. is defeated or at least severely weakened militarily.
Okay, so that's very important. He's saying, and we're going to see this again in his arguments, he's saying that the U.S. needs to be defeated or weakened. I don't agree with that, and we're going to see that he actually proposes, you can go through his videos, he says that he is a proponent of nonviolent resistance, but yet he gets into violence and when it's needed. And although he's a big proponent of civil disobedience, he never seems to tell us what civil disobedience he's in favor of, except some vague form of community organizing and leadership, which I suppose he believes himself to be one of.
The U.S. has successfully toppled every country that's dared to switch their oil sales off of the dollar, with the exception of Iran. And they're working on Iran. The bankers don't care about the coins you keep in your house. It makes absolutely no difference to them.
Well, if the bankers didn't care about the coins that you keep in your house, and as recently I pointed out on Silver Futurist's video, where he says that we can account for the shorting of silver just based upon the needs of the bullion sellers, the hedging needs, we can account for that, then why are they shorting silver? Why is J.P. Morgan and Bear Stearns before them, and apparently, according to Bix Weir, perhaps Citigroup now, why are they so interested in shorting silver? What is it that they're afraid of? Why don't they let silver run to $1,000? Or could it be perhaps that silver actually has a power that they're afraid of, and that is to break confidence in the paper dollar system?
People are playing the game for control of entire nations. If they win, they get the mines, they get the oil fields, they get the real estate, everything of value. And in the end, they will have your coins because they control the assets that you're going to have to buy with those coins.
Well, they already control all those things, so that doesn't really make any sense. If he's saying that if we don't stop them, they're going to end up controlling everything, well, they already control everything. So the next argument he makes is that it's not going to do you any good because all the things that you need to buy are going to be controlled by them, so they're going to set the prices for them. Well, again, that's surprising coming from someone who says that he believes in a step of resistance before there's some type of violent revolution or something like that, which I have never advocated, I do not advocate, and I don't believe Chris Duane advocates either. But so why wouldn't someone who believes in stepping outside of the system advocate for coming barter systems, systems where people are able to produce and trade the things they need, specifically organically grown food, a lot of other things, people beginning to make things that other people can use, etc. Why wouldn't he propose that type of resistance from the system that he's always condemning?
Furthermore, the U.S. government has already seized precious metals from citizens in the past. Why do you think that they would refrain from doing it today?
Now, again, that's I won't say it's a lie, but it is a half-truth. The government never seized precious metals. They passed a law that stated that you had to sell them to the government, a forced sale, and they specified the price. After that, and I think the compliance was very low, they revalued gold, which essentially devalued the dollar, and so that's not at all accurate. Now, this article that you see here that he puts in here where the Fed seizes gold coins worth $80 million from a Pennsylvania family, if you go ahead and look that up, you'll find out that those were gold coins that, in essence, one can argue were actually stolen from the Treasury initially. You'll have to pull up the story and go into it. But this argument that the government has seized these coins is just simply not true, and there's no basis for making that claim.
If your coins did, by some stretch of the imagination, pose a threat to them. Let's be realistic here. Never once in history has a dictatorial system been toppled by a people hoarding precious metals. And
Well, that's not exactly accurate either. The Roman Empire could be argued, was toppled by the breakdown of their currency. Now, of course, there's a lot of other factors in there, including the barbarians and others. But at the perimeter of the Roman Empire, the people began to lose confidence in this watered down Roman denarius, the silver coin that hardly had any silver left in it, and they started to use other currencies. So that's not accurate either. And I'm sure if you go through history, you can find many instances where, and I don't have the time to do it right now, go ahead and do that and post it in the comments, but many instances where governments were weakened and ultimately collapsed because the people lost confidence in the currency that they issued.
not once in history has a pile of precious metals protected anyone from war once the bombs were falling through their roof.
Well, that's correct too. If you're still there when the bombs are falling through the roof. But there were a tremendous number of Jews who were protected from what happened in Germany during World War II. A lot of them managed to escape just with their skin, and the reason why is they were able to bribe their way out with physical gold. So, again, not true.
To pretend that something is magically changed and that now, if you just hold this metal in your possession, you're going to be immune from the horrors that the rest of the world is going to face when the dollar falls, is delusional. I understand why people want to believe it. It's comforting. It's an easy answer. Just buy silver and everything will be okay. But it's not going to be okay. Let's take a look at another quote by the same individual, the last paragraph in particular. The system is mortally wounded, and when the dollar collapses, all the NDAAs in the world will be a pipe dream for the elite. We will be taking care of things in our control for when they are most weak. Okay, yes, the system may be mortally wounded, but if you think the NDAA and the government's other preparations to use the military against citizens is a pipe dream, then you know nothing about history. Wounded regimes are by far the most bloodthirsty and dangerous. It's essentially like having a gut-shot grizzly bear in a corner. When governments are on the brink of losing control, they almost always resort to brutalizing and killing those who pose a threat to them. And if your coins pose a threat to them, then they would turn their barrels in your direction. That's just common sense. And talk about pipe dreams. If you think your coins are going to allow you to take control of this faltering system, when they still have tanks and drones and hordes of brainwashed soldiers who think that you're a terrorist, you're deluding yourself. Now, I agree that protests, such as waving signs in the street and petitioning the government to change, is a waste of time. But to act like this is the only option is to disregard the entire spectrum of civil disobedience, which would include tax resistance if you were being honest with yourself.
Okay, so he gave one idea, and I've searched through his videos. I don't know what type of tax resistance he's talking about, but that certainly could be a form of nonviolent protest. There's a lot of people who've talked about going galt. Certainly one way to go galt with your assets is to stop investing them in the Wall Street casino and invest them in physical silver. But I just don't see where he's proposing the type of nonviolent resistance, and we're going to get to the fact that he's actually proposing, in fact, the only proposal that he has is to break the law, and we'll see that in a second here.
This is even more ironic because on the same page where he posted the first quote, you'll find another famous quote. Let them march all they want, as long as they pay their taxes. We could say the same thing in another way. Let them stack silver all that they want, as long as they pay their taxes. Here's what it comes down to. If buying silver was a threat to the power elite, it would be illegal. It's as simple as that.
Okay, so let's use that logic. We can use that logic about anything. If X were a threat to the powers that be, then it would be illegal. It's as simple as that. So if that's the case, that anything that you do that is a threat to the powers that be, or if you believe that you are involved in some type of nonviolent revolution or you want to see change in the system, and if that had any chance of really changing anything, then it would be made illegal. So in essence, what Storm Cloud's Gathering is telling you is that if you want to change anything, you have to break the law. He is advocating that the only way to change the system is to break the law.
To get to the point where people are actually organizing outside the system is not a question of coinage. It's a question of political unity and resolve. which unfortunately is virtually non-existent right now, even in the so-called truth or freedom movement or whatever you want to call it. You're not going to fix that by insisting that people make a particular financial investment. The reality of the matter is that even if buying massive amounts of silver were an effective strategy for taking down the banking elite, less and less people are going to be in a position to even cover their basic needs as this crisis progresses, much less invest in precious metals. For those who can, for those who have the means, great, you're protecting your wealth against inflation.
Okay, so there's another lie. I don't know what type of system he's going to propose to protect the people who are devastated by hyperinflation. I guess he's going to expect people to join into some kind of giant commune or something. I don't know. But I know that encouraging people to stack whatever amounts they can. Now, I've covered the fact that a silver dime is still roughly $2 to $3. That is not exactly out of the reach of anyone, regardless of their means. I've covered before the fact that everyone has the potential to live below their means, and there's no reason why they can't save a percentage, no matter how small in dollar amounts that is, of their means in physical silver. So again, another bogus argument with no solutions proposed except a bunch of people sitting around in a commune singing Kumbaya.
It's a worthwhile measure to take for you and your family. But don't pretend that your responsibility ends there. It doesn't. The real solution to the insanity we face is going to come down to people. You're going to have to learn to organize your communities. You're going to have to learn to be leaders. These are
Organize your communities to do what? Leaders leading people to do what? Is he proposing? I think we've already proven that the only thing he thinks that can change anything is breaking the law. So I suppose that he is proposing that these leaders, such as himself, organize people together to go out and break the laws. That's the only conclusion I can come to.
Social skills, not commodities or investments. A lot of you aren't going to like that answer because it's not a convenient answer. You can't go online and buy an ounce of leadership or community organization skills or a bottle of emotional maturity. No one is going to be able to hand you a ready-made solution, and you should be highly suspicious of anyone who claims otherwise. If you want to...
Such as you. What is the ready-made solution that you're handing people? Following you? What are you proposing? We don't get any answers.
change things. You're going to have to go out there in the real world and fight for your children's future.
How do you go out into the real world and fight for your children's future? What type of fighting is he talking about? Again, people, be very careful who you follow. Sometimes people aren't always who they appear.
If you succeed, it's only going to be because you fight with the ferocity that comes when you realize what the stakes really are. In closing, there is no silver bullet. There is no easy answer. Those who try to convince you otherwise are doing you a disservice.
No, there actually is a silver bullet. I've proposed that. That's what my channel is based on. We've gone over the numbers literally hundreds of times. There isn't nearly enough physical silver. A tremendous price rise in physical silver would at least be a serious blow to the manipulation of silver and to the banking system, the banking cartel, who is behind the price suppression. So he doesn't really explain anything in this video. He doesn't really understand economics. He doesn't really understand history. And I will say also, if you look at his other videos, he doesn't understand philosophy or political science. If he did, which by the way, those were my majors in college, we studied Thomas Hobbes and Jonathan Locke, the primary difference, and you'll see in his videos, his latest is a natural rights video, and you'll find when you listen to them, he lists the natural rights, but he finds no way to derive those rights. And of course, that was the big difference between Locke and Hobbes. Locke derived natural rights from a divine source, whereas Hobbes derived them from a type of mystical people power through the government. Now, if you know history, you know that the framers of the U.S. Constitution discarded the ideas of Hobbes, Bentham, and the other, I will say, relativists, and they went with a divine basis for rights, which is enshrined in the U.S. Declaration of Independence, which states that We hold these truths to be self-evident. All men are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, among these are, etc. So he doesn't understand history. He doesn't understand the Constitution, which, by the way, is the best document that we need to go forward. We need a return to the Constitution. We don't need to draft some new document. We don't need some community organizing. And I think that ultimately Chris Duane is probably correct that we will see a beginning of decentralization and a breakdown of the police state when the money begins to fail. And of course, when the money begins to fail, people who have stacked silver are going to be in a much better position to weather the storm, regardless of whether they actually contributed to the collapse of the system. I believe that both are true, but it's quite clear that Storm Clouds Gathering believes that neither is true, and I really don't know why he made this video, but he definitely has decided to target the silver stackers, and he's going to lose because he's wrong. And we'll talk to you next time.